I want to congratulate you and We the World on the 20th anniversary of 11 days of global unity. Together, you, me, and we can create a better world and have fun doing it.
Thank you, Dr. Jane Goodell, for helping We the World and all our partners to celebrate over 20 years of 11 days of global unity. And thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit, featuring visionary leaders and activists, profound dialogues, and bold calls to action. We are promoting the hashtag urgency for action. That's urgency, the number 4, and then action. Hashtag urgency for action. We are using that in all our activities. My name is Birgit Ben-Eli, and I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement and International Outreach for We the World. Today, I'm excited that we will be joined by Shannon Prosper and Jen Agosti, who will be talking about interdependence, the second theme of the 11 Days of Global Unity. For the full 11-day summit schedule, you can register for free going to 11daysofglobalunity.org. 11 is the numeral and 11daysofglobalunity.org. There you can see all the 11 summit broadcasts. And at we.net, you can take action with the 11 campaigns for change, subscribe to a trans magazine, and you can make a contribution to support all this work by going to we.net/donate. Thank you so much. Before we bring on our extraordinary speakers, I want to acknowledge some of our amazing partners who we support and collaborate with during 11 Days of Global Unity and all year round. The UN International Day of Peace NGO Committee, Peace Day Philly, the Unite for Peace Coalition, which includes Unity Earth, the Sign Network, One World Rising, Global POHO, Hubcast Media, The Awakening World, We the World, also Climate Week, the Deep Rapid Transformation Convergence, Pause the World for Peace in Times Square, and Pace e Bene Nonviolence Campaign. What an amazing movement, representing literally millions of people working to achieve global unity. All working with We the World and the campaign, We Campaign at we.net. Now let's bring in our host, Rick Olfig. Rick Olfig is the founder of We the World at we.net and the co-creator of 11 Days of Global Unity. Welcome to the broadcast, Rick.
Thank you, Birgit, and thank you all so much for joining us. First, I want to bring up how we are living in a time when in the USA, there appears to be an erosion of civil rights, the rule of law, democracy, and freedom, which is harming millions of people in the US and also around the world. Later, all of the speakers on this panel will have the opportunity to express their call to action. And I will talk about the We Power campaign at we.net/We Power campaign. Of course, all of this relates to the focus of today's discussion, interdependence. So before we hear from our speakers, I wanted to mention about Interdependence Day. Every year during 11 Days of Global Unity, we celebrate Interdependence Day on September 12th. Happy Interdependence Day. We started in 2002 at the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa. There, our dear friend Angangak Liberth led the delegates in a convocation establishing the annual Interdependence Day. Angangak is an indigenous elder from the Arctic Circle. And for the launch of 11 Days of Global Unity, we presented We the World's Global Declaration of Interdependence, which was signed by Dr. Jane Goodall and eventually by thousands of others. You can see it. Also, you can sign it by going to we.net/we declaration. It was inspired by the Earth Charter, who we partnered with on this. For me, conscious interdependence is best exemplified by the wisdom of indigenous peoples around the world. Now I'm excited for you to meet Shannon Crossbear, and she will lead the discussion about interdependence. What's in a word? Interdependence.
I'm excited to introduce Shannon Crossbear. She has worked facilitating and consulting with the National Indian Child Welfare Association and the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, Georgetown. She has worked with tribal and non-tribal communities, providing technical assistance and circles of care, utilizing traditional interventions, and the promotion of cultural congruent and trauma-informed practices. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
And Shannon Crossbear has been a good friend and a leader in the interdependence campaign of We the World. I think we can all benefit from indigenous wisdom regarding all our relations, with Mother Earth, with each other, and with all that is. So Shannon, could you please bring in the other guest speaker and lead the discussion about interdependence? What's in a word? And then at the end, we will have our call to action. And thanks for all your extraordinary work. And welcome to the broadcast, Shannon Crossbear.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. And Brigitte. And Anin in the way Maganak, in the Gijigat. I always like to start with just a few words in Ojibwe, which is just welcome you, hello, my relatives, and it's a good day. Those are two really good things to say. So, I'm very honored to be here. I'm honored to have the opportunity to have this discussion, and I get to have it with other strong, powerful, strong-hearted women in the world and brave-hearted men to bring our world into a place where we understand and really create a world that works for all. And so with that, I get to have Jen Augusti join me. Welcome, Jen. I'm so pleased to be able to introduce her and just say, but first I want to let you know that I got to meet Jen through work that we were doing with the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And we've kind of seen each other for a number of years. And then more recently, we've got to work on an initiative together. And I just have a deep respect for Jen and for the work that she's doing and how it contributes to a world that hopefully will be better for our children and our grandchildren. So Jen, I'm going to let you tell the story of who you are better than me telling the story of who you are and how you come to this conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jen.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm really humbled. I was really humbled to be invited. And I think when you first asked me, I sort of thought, why me? That's something that I think about a lot in all of this. I think the why me is how I got to this place, which is I'm a mom and a wife and a friend and a daughter and a sister. And I think that all of those things are very much the core of who I am and what drives me. I feel like there's a lot of philosophy around this, I know, but there is no me without all of those other pieces of me, and in the bigger world. So, I don't want to talk too much about the work that I do, but I do think that the work that I do is just an extension of who I am, which is just deep caring for people, and particularly for people in communities who have been historically, systemically, legally marginalized, oppressed, othered, in ways that are not the kind of world that I imagine. So that's a little of who I am, and I also remember our early conversations from way back, and I remember you used the word, sort of relatives, and I honestly, especially now, Shannon, probably more than ever, I do think of you as a relative in a very real, not just what's in a word way. And so it's part of what brought me to this conversation, and it's part of what definitely drives me in our work together, and in all of my work.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jen. So of course I was thinking about this as we got ready to have this conversation. I was thinking about interdependence and the word interdependence. And then when Rick was talking about the Declaration of Interdependence, I was on a call yesterday that had to do with climate and climate change and doing the work around that for one of the other campaigns. And one of the things that was happening in the climate collaboratory, they were talking about kind of doing some activities that would lead up to the 200th celebration in 2026 of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And of course, I had some, had some feelings about that, but what I came away with was just thinking about what if we had the signing of the Declaration of Interdependence as a world declaration, of course, and that's what it's meant to be. And so thinking about, well, what does that mean? What does that word interdependence and how would that look in a world, that worked for all? And so so as I was thinking about that, then of course it made me think about the work that you do, Jen, because that we do, right?
We do. We.
That we do. That has to do with really, it really is kind of the human being part of that interdependence, right? That we recognize that we're all interdependent. We all need each other. And I always think of that as extending, like when I think about interdependence, what's in a word, and I've been kind of doing a lot of linguistic kind of stuff lately, thinking deeply about the words that we use and how they shape and form the world that we live in. And so when I think about interdependence, I think for myself, I can't think about interdependence without thinking about everything. Like interdependence, the Earth Charter talks about it in terms of being in right relationship with oneself, with others, with the earth, and all the inhabitants, right? And beyond, right? And so I think about that because I truly think about what would change in the way that we approach each other if we really understood at a deeper level this idea that we are not only interdependent, but we are related in that interdependence, right? So those are some things that were just kind of in my mind as I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I also, as you say all that, and it was a really interesting reflection. I was reflecting a lot about when you invited me, Shannon, about the we and the international part of this and the language of interdependence, and thinking it's an interesting time right now, um, because there is an opportunity for a lot of people to think more broadly about the world than they ever have, and that's maybe one benefit of social media is people can see a bigger world, and the question then is, are they choosing to see a bigger world, and what bigger world are they seeing? I was having this conversation with my son recently about how different people start to shape their worldview. And some people see it, right, as like, I look around the windows and it's the people who live around me. That's my world. Some people then like, go out and they realize there's a bigger world, right? There's a bigger community. And sometimes people see even a bigger world than that. But I think some of the danger and where I think we've gotten ourselves into difficulty now more than ever is that people have become more insular and people see only their world as those people who look like them, who talk like them, who have their experiences, and that becomes their only sphere of caring about. Um, and differences rather than being something to embrace and realizing that the interdependence that you described, people see that as a threat. And that's what I think is this challenge, right? So people start fighting against threats because that's what you do for threats, as opposed to unifying for what could be if we actually were together with the same values. If I realized what did benefit you also was good for me. And I think that again, this like zero-sum game of competition rather than collaboration is what makes interdependence really hard for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, just somebody had said something the other day about it being a new concept for them, like this interdependence being a new concept. And so I was reflecting for myself about how it wasn't new. It was like I'm trying to imagine living in a world where people don't have that understanding. And I guess I'm living in a world that people don't have that understanding, but it's hard for me. It's difficult for me to see how they arrived there, how they could have that much disconnect. And yet, I do understand the things that pull us away from connection, but it really is all about that connection. It's all
About
about,
connection.
I think you said it, we take care of what we care about. Even in that most insular place, we
Yeah.
take care of. So in order to care about others, we have to really be in relationship, whether that be a human being, or something from the plant nation, or,
Yeah.
there's and I think for myself about how rich, I mean, really, I feel very rich, not monetarily, but I feel very rich in the fact that I I get to hear people who think differently than me, who experience life differently than me. And there has been such richness, in that exchange, in that discovery, in that such a personal benefit to me about learning about those things. And so, and it's very interesting, even in kind of complicated discussions where people have different levels of education or different levels of understanding or different levels of experience, and being able to, for myself, for hear that and think about how do I integrate that? How do I integrate that information and that knowledge and that way of expressing or whatever it might be in order to keep moving into that place of honoring the interdependence.
Yeah. And what's key to what you just said though, Shannon, is you walk in the world as a way of um an avid learner at all times, right? You always are open to what you can learn, how it can, how you can grow. And I think that's not as common as we would hope. Again, I feel like there's a lot of people who um, aren't as open to the learning. And I'm not sure why, but I do think that's a tension. I also think this goes to these cultural differences that we talk about a lot, to cast a very broad net, right? Indigenous people overall operate, I think, from a place of interdependence, from working in harmony with, understanding these notions of collaboration and relationship. And I think a lot of people who look like me, a lot of the more Eurocentric ways of being in the world are very often this mindset of like competition or a scarcity mindset, right? Like if you have something, that means I have less, um, rather than if you have, it means we both have. And I think some of those mindsets and to get in the weeds, it's what I think is actually so challenging in our mental health system, right? Work that we do together, which is the US mental health system is inherently rooted in treatment for individuals, forgetting that individuals only live and thrive and grow in the context of family and community and relationship. But so many of our treatment models are geared towards an individual. So I think that's like to me, like a great microcosm of the difference of like the independence shaping systems and shaping values and shaping models, and interdependence, which is shaping ways of beings rooted in relationship. And it's a shift, but I think that's a value base of if we could get to a place where we lead from a place of relationship, which requires trust, which requires humility, right? Which really just honors this kindness, right? Best intention. If we could get there, that to me is the opportunity for the interdependence.
Yeah, a couple of things that when you were talking just kind of went through my head. Jen, one was had to do with this difference in terms of kind of the worldview or cosmology, right? And
Yeah.
in terms of what we're ascribing to indigenous and ascribing to the Western. And I guess my challenge for that is always that we're everybody at some point in time in their
Like indigenous. Yes.
were
Yeah.
indigenous.
Indigenous.
And
Yes.
so what
Yes.
has happened to so it's not that it's not for me, it's not that indigenous people, are the wisdom keepers of the world, although I would love to be able to say, whoa, that's cool. But the fact is there is wisdom there. It's just that within the indigenous population, this is why land back, people think it's about this in a different way, but conceptually, if you think about land back, when we say land back, it's land back. It's land. Come back to the land. Come back to the land, to your indigenous knowledge, to
Yeah.
your land, rooted in who you are, because who you are at that very basic level is what is going to add to that collective, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing that I often think about when you were talking about this tension between individualization and collectivism is really like I heard the term when I was when the movement for Idle No More came up in Canada, which was really about knowing who you are, knowing your treaties, knowing, to be idle no more in the conversation. And so when I think about that, one of the things that came out of this is this idea of individual responsibility for the collective outcome. And
I
so
like that. I
what is
like that.
my, not
Yeah.
to be more like someone else or all
No.
this stuff, but to be more of who we are, right? And when that happens, what the beauty of that actually is and the understanding, you can't help but get to a place of understanding interdependence. Because
Yeah.
literally, that whole thing, I am who you are who I am, is is we know it's true. We have this Western, if you want to use Western terminology, we have this Western terminology of things like epigenetics, right? And which is what indigenous people call blood memory.
Right.
We carry with us
Yeah.
all of that, right? And
Yeah.
we are indeed from the cosmos, from the stars. So, we're made up of we're articles made up of particles, right? And and it's and in that though, what is the specialty of humanity's role in um, promoting and celebrating and honoring that interdependence?
Yeah. And there's a lot. I mean, I actually, I know and I can't remember exactly where in Africa. I think it's been attributed to a number of different countries, but the philosophy of Ubuntu, right, which is I am because we are, and simply said, and it really is this notion, right, that I only am because I'm part of this greater collective. I'm shaped by everything around me at every moment. I cannot exist outside of the bigger us. And I also love this notion that we do all get, like everyone was indigenous at some point. What happened that drew some cultures away from those roots into this um, prioritization almost of power over prioritization of relationship and collectivism. And I think power is a really big word. I mean, if we were doing, when I think about global unity, I wonder, like, if I were to come up with, be asked about one word that makes it hardest to get to global unity, I might come up with the word power. because I think this notion of power, which can mean a whole lot of things to a whole lot of different people, in some ways is always the factor that divides rather than unites. Um, that power feels like is perceived as this. And you and I both know there's so many different types of power. Like even that's not a zero-sum game, right? There's power with, there's power by. Um, the only power that's problematic is power over. And so if we think about those different, right, the best collective action movements have been power by the people. Idle no more. So it is this interesting to me, where tension's almost created where it doesn't need to be. It actually is opportunity for collaboration, for connection. And it's almost like we're traveling down this path, and which pathway do we go when the road splits? Um, and then how do we get it? So when the road does split, like how can we make it so the road reconverges so we can get back to a place where we're leading with kindness, we're leading with curiosity, we're leading with, mindset of growth and learning, in service of interdependence. I don't know what we do to get there, but that's definitely what drives me. Because I've got to believe that even though the roads might have diverged right now, there's got to be an opportunity in the future for them coming back together.
Well, I see that Rick has joined us, but I just want to say something very much about the power, and that is, and when the question that you asked, because Rick will talk more about this, but it really is these things that are being done. This is it. This is how we get there. We build relationship. We share the best we can of ourselves and the work that we're doing. We ask other people to join us, and we become the movement of all movements. So it's not a singular movement, but it's all the movements, and that's really what the world is about, right? And so it's like it does kind of converge into that conversation. And power, I just wanted to say this power within, this power is so much more than the power over, or it's just being able to do that. So I'm Rick, thanks for coming back in and for letting Jen and I have a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great conversation. And thank you for bringing up power and the different aspects, power over, power with. And it does kind of lead toward this discussion about calls to action, because unfortunately, we're living in a time where power over seems to be dominating quite a bit. And I'm also interested to hear if there are any other responses. For example, Birgit, if you have had any responses to anything that anybody said that you wanted to share.
And when Shannon was describing interdependence, and before Jen even uttered the words, I was thinking about Ubuntu as well. And I'm sure also in the indigenous context, there are words for probably similar words that express Ubuntu, right? That I am because we are. So I think there was a beautiful way of bringing this in. And I would have several questions and ideas, right? I mean, one for one is like the indigenous context again. What does it mean? How does learning look like in an indigenous context? I also thought it was interesting that you said, at some point we were all indigenous, but that's an interesting concept. Yet I don't know where that wisdom comes from. If I look at my background, thinking. And the other thing also with Jen, I was thinking, since you are working with, in order to transform, organizations, how you, what do you experience? How difficult is that? And the other thing I was thinking about is that you mentioned, why we are so separate and why we live in silos. As you didn't use the word silos, but you used something else. That we are so divided and we all live in our own world. We are not willing to listen to the other anymore. And how can we change this? I think I was just, when you described this, Jen, I was just thinking maybe it's fear of the other, and how can we transform this? I mean, but listen, there are a million, points I can, delve on, and
I love this conversation.
Can I just, Shannon, is it okay if I wanted to actually respond really quickly, if I can, to that last question about, the bubbles that people live in are getting tighter and more insular. And I actually do think it's fear. I think um, and I think, again, like if you think about basic human instinct, anytime you feel a threat, you have a fear response, and then you react accordingly, right? Fight or flight. And so people either retract further into their bubble, which would be the flight, or they fight. And so I know Shannon had this great language that I've been using all over recently, which is we have to stop fighting against and start uniting for. And the only way I think we can make that switch of fighting against threats is to actually unite, to stop seeing other people as threats, to stop seeing other groups as threats. And that to me comes straight from relationship, right? We know there's tons of research on implicit bias that the only way to get rid of biases is to actually get to know and form relationships with people and things of that bias group. And that's the only thing that gets rid. But the more we live in these bubbles with people who look like us, talk like us, think like us, socioeconomically, all of those bubbles that we've created, the more we do that, to me, the danger is that just perpetuates our fear of other, which creates threat, which creates the adversity. And so the more we can break that down, and now I guess maybe this goes, Rick, I'll say my call to action, which I'll say 1,000 different ways, which is I think people, especially those who look like me, who are more likely to live in particular kinds of bubbles, um, have to really work hard. Bettina's love language is put the hand on the flagpole, take some risks, um, and actually get out of the bubble, right? And to whom much is given, much is expected. So, with all that I have, with all the gifts I've been given in the world in all the different ways, it's my obligation, as I've tried to teach my kids, to use them in ways that actually are for all of us, that are for interdependence and aren't just trying to line my own pockets or
Yeah,
onto my own power.
very nice. Thank you, Jen. And I'm thinking when you're talking about the bubbles that people are in, for me, a big part of that is media and the media bubbles that we live in. I've been saying for decades, the messages in the media, and of course, including social media, but all kinds of media, the messages of the media become the fabric of our culture. And what is culture but an agreement of what's normal, right? In society, right? So I see the media bubbles being a cause of the separation that we're talking about. So that's why on a lot of the panels that when I'm talking about media, my call to action at that point is be the media, be the media. And that means you have some kind of consciousness about going outside of your bubble and your community, but to kind of share and connect with the society as a whole. So I just wanted to share that. And Shannon, did you want to react to what Birgit was talking about also?
Yeah, I mean, I love having conversations with Brigitte too, and just being able to share. So, yeah, I think I'm always thinking back to kind of the practical. So what does that mean? This is all very, very nice in the words spoken kind of thing, but what does it mean in your daily life? What does it mean to act as a person who is conscious of their interdependence? And what are the things that might lead you to that, right? And as you said, Rick, yeah, be the media. I always tell people, first of all, I love Robbie Robertson's line in one of his songs where he says, "You don't stand a chance against my prayers." And I always like that because again, it's a way of keeping myself conscious of, you know, how do we work towards something? You know, when we go into ceremonies, we pray for our leaders, even the ones that we are adamantly, opposed to, and we don't pray that bad things happen to them, mind you. We pray that they're given the wisdom and the strength and the support to make right decisions that will promote and support life, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, all of the actions, what you do have the power to make change as an individual. And you don't know, I was thinking about in the book, The Education of Little Tree's talking to his grandma, and his grandma says, he's showing something to her, right? Something new and beautiful. And she says to him, the first thing to do when you find something good is go out and share it, because you never know how far the good is going to spread. And I think this idea of elevating these, because the fact is that there is balance in the world, and there are many, many efforts that are supporting life. Because we don't have the presence, and I know as an Indigenous person, from that perspective of being invisible, so we have to raise the visibility of all these good things. And as you as an individual can sign that petition or that declaration rather of interdependence, right? You can go to we.com. You can show up for things like this that really say, I'm ready to talk about this, right? And give other people a moment wherever they are to just maybe do something a little differently.
Yes. And I just want to also pick up on what you had been saying earlier about the Declaration of Interdependence. Wouldn't it be nice if the world signed that, right? So in a sense, that has happened with the Earth Charter. The Earth Charter is one of the main primary declarations of interdependence. And we partnered, we the world partnered with the Earth Charter to create what we call the Global Declaration of Interdependence, which, as you mentioned, Shannon, can be signed by going to we.net/declaration. And I'll read the preamble so you can get this sense. The preamble is, in acknowledgement of the many existing documents and efforts that promote peace, sustainability, global interconnectedness, reverence for life and unity, we, the world, hereby offers this Declaration of Interdependence as a guiding set of principles. It is inspired by the Earth Charter, the essential values of which represent those of the many peoples of the earth. And you can, when you go to we.net/declaration, you can read it. It's very short. It's only 11 lines long. And there's a picture there of Jane Goodall being one of the first people to sign this global declaration of interdependence, which represents all of these declarations that we're aware of, primarily the Earth Charter. So I think we got from you your call to action about sharing about interdependence, Shannon, unless you wanted to do, one summary call to action, then we can go to Birgit after that.
Yeah, we could actually, Jen and I and all of us here in this room, in this virtual room, could talk about this for hours, right? Because there's so many aspects to it, so many aspects. But I guess my one call is just take the time to build relationship, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with another human being, whether it's with the earth, take that time to do that, because once having done something and know something, you can't unknow it. And there's nothing more powerful than, a statement that one of my relatives, Menage Hill from Standing Rock, said years ago, and that is, if you want to learn about something, go to the library. There's lots of good stuff about it. Lots of, you can learn about plants, you can learn about animals, you can learn about human beings, you can learn about history, you can learn about war, you learn about everything. But if you want to understand it, spend time. Spend time with individuals or with the earth or with the thing that you're trying to understand, and you will come out with a much richer experience. And find the places you can do that. That's my call to action.
Good. Thank you, Shannon. And Birgit, what's your call to action?
So I was thinking about what Shannon said. We have to go beyond an idea and take this into action. And as Jen said, we have to move out of our silos or echo chambers. So I think something very simple, as both of you, all of you mentioned, is that it can be simple, a step a day to remember to create change, to approach someone who's different, to listen to someone else's story, to extend kindness and maybe to our neighbor. And, because our actions, they ripple outward and forward to create something, to create independence beyond but beyond, people's sometimes and often closed environment. And I think this is one of the, as we just mentioned, it's one of the biggest hurdle probably is fear of the other. And the other can be anyone, right? I think to be inclusive, to be open, to listen to someone even we don't agree, and we don't have to agree, but at least be open and listen. And I think that's the only way to move forward and shift from a me society to a we society. And me in that sense can be a group, can be more than an individual. So thank you so much for both of you. And we can always continue here, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Birgit. And for me, we've been promoting the hashtag urgency for action, and that's urgency, the word, the number 4, and then the word action, urgency, a hashtag urgency for action. And we've been using that during the 11 days in all our activities. And here's my call to action. It's called the We Power campaign. It's about the power of we, which of course, by definition, is connected to an integral part of conscious interdependence, right? So, it's about the power of we, millions of us coming together to transform our society so it prioritizes the common good. To help us launch the We Power campaign, you can go to we.net/We Power campaign. So, Shannon and Jen, could you please give some information about how people can get more information, how they could collaborate with you going forward? So, Shannon?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me through we.net.
Good.
So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me is the we.net, or just my email, which is shannoncrossbear@gmail.com.
Okay, great. And Jen,
Um,
how could
yeah.
people collaborate with what you're interested in doing?
Yeah, if people are interested in reaching out, I actually I have a consulting spot on the internet, JRA Consulting Ltd.com. That is my website. And so people can go there. And there's my email address, which is jen@JRAconsultingltd.com. And I love to work in partnership with as many people as possible. It does take all of us.
Certainly does. Thank you. And well, this has been an amazing and inspiring discussion. Thank you, Shannon Crossbear, Jen Agosti, and of course, Birgit Ben Ali, so much. And thank all of you for watching this and for being part of 11 Days of Global Unity. To get involved, please go to we.net. It's all about we, right? So for people who don't know, this is a W. So let's go from a me society, the M, to a we society. And that's why we launched we.net. So together we can create a world that works for all. Thank you all so much.